and we need more people out there, speaking truth instead of this rhetoric they have on CNN, celebrities, and a bunch of nonsense. Now, you were talking about how the British Empire essentially uses, the World Bank, and I found out a while back that the Bank of England is one of the main powers of that World Bank. But the Bank of England is actually also the primary stockholder in our United States Federal Reserve System.
Oh, sure.
How do you think that came about, and why do the American people not have control over their monetary system, but it's actually manipulated by the Bank of England? And wouldn't you agree that this is one of the greatest risks to our national security?
Of course it is. Remember, I'm a veteran of World War II. And when I left the United States, we had a United States. When I came back in 1946, in the spring of 46, we had Truman as the president. On the 13th of April of 1945, we had lost our sovereignty when President Roosevelt had died and Truman took over. We were against any kind of world empire. Roosevelt, and it was our tendency during the war. We were against the idea of world empire. We wanted to have these colonies freed as we had been freed. And Roosevelt was committed, and many of us were committed to, that's the post-war perspective. Once this war is over, we're going to end this colonial system, we're going to free these nations, eliminate the British Empire, and function as that was the purpose of the United Nations, was to create a mechanism by which you could incorporate nations which were becoming freed into a world system which would be entirely wall-to-wall sovereign nation states. And the minute that Roosevelt died, or the day after, the morning after, the United States went over with Truman to Britain, where we were determined to destroy the British Empire and all other empires by a process of development, and to use our power we had because of the great war machine we had. We were going to convert that into a production machine for the world. We could have freed the world. But so we shut down a great deal of our war machine, our production machine, instead of converting it as it had been intended. This was intended to develop Africa and other parts of the world into really a system of free states. And we thought that was the security of our future, is to eliminate empire, which had caused these problems we lived through all these times. And that should be the thing today. But the fight is essentially that. It's the fight for the rights of human beings to have their own sovereign societies, which they control, and to deal with one another in matters of common interest for the planet as a whole. And if we have that power, the British Empire is not going to exist. And if we maintain our power, the British won't tolerate it.
Now, the Federal Reserve, as we all know, is a private banking institution, and some of the most powerful branches of it are the Washington, D.C. branch and, of course, the New York branch. Our now Secretary of Treasury, Timothy Geithner, was the head of the New York branch of the Federal Reserve System. What are your feelings on Mr. Geithner being in this position, and do you think he's going to further the interests of his Federal Reserve buddies, or do you think he's actually got the interests of the American people in mind?
Well, he's a tool. He really is not that bright. I've been followed his operations. He's really not. There's not that much up there. He's a dupe. He does his job. There are other people inside the Federal Reserve System who are honest people. But unfortunately, the institution itself is wrong. Mm-hmm. It was put in by a combination, by the assassination of President McKinley, which brought in a son of the Confederacy, which was Theodore Roosevelt. His uncle was the head of the Confederate Intelligence Service operating out of London during the Civil War. And so he came back in, and then he was succeeded after Taft by Wilson. Now, Wilson's family were the leading family organizing the Ku Klux Klan. As a matter of fact, he revived the Ku Klux Klan from the White House personally while he was president. The growth of the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s and beyond was entirely the organization of Woodrow Wilson. Now you have Woodrow Wilson and Teddy Roosevelt were the key figures from the inside of the United States around whom the organization of the Federal Reserve System was created. It was created to defeat and overthrow our system of banking our system of banking, just to go back to this history to get it clear, when we had just won the Revolutionary War, in effect, in 1781, 82, we had a problem that we had banks in these colonies, the former colonies, but the banks had been chartered and created as banks as colonial banks under colonies. So they were all more or less bankrupt because of the war debt. So therefore, Hamilton created the conception that the solution was to create a federal union of the United States to supersede the colonies, the colonial form, and to create a national bank which would combine the forces of government to protect, in reorganization and bankruptcy, to protect these banks, to keep them alive. So in order to do that, we had to have a constitution. Now, we had a constitution, which was the Declaration of Independence, which was a constitution in a full sense. But it was not it was still an embodiment of several separate sovereigns. We had to have a united sovereign. So that the Hamilton's conception of the national bank led to the negotiation which created our nation and our constitution. So under that, we were unique in the sense that we said no money can be created and used in our name except by approval of the federal government. The federal government can generate money as credit only by support of the representatives in the Congress. So therefore, as we did under Greenbackism, under Lincoln, the federal government has a monopoly on the creation of money. The Federal Reserve System was a back door created by the British in order to bring the British system in to take over the United States. Now, Roosevelt controlled the Federal Reserve System significantly while he was president. But after he was out of the presidency, hell broke loose. So that the fight over that, my view today is we have to go back to the presidential system as defined by the formation. It has to be, in a sense, Hamiltonian, because this is the issue. We now have, our banks are bankrupt. All the banks are bankrupt. Therefore, what do we do? We have elements of the banks which are not bankrupt. That is, they're viable. They have legitimate structure. The banking institution itself is legitimate. We have to protect it, as Hamilton recognized back in the period at the close of the American Revolutionary War. So we have to have the federal government move in, put this whole banking system through bankruptcy reorganization, like any other bankrupt thing. And those things which are valuable or can be resuscitated for banking, for the purposes of our nation, should be resuscitated and given a program of recovery and reorganization. That which is trash, which is most of this Wall Street trash, the $8 to $13 billion we bailed out, should simply be canceled.
I agree 100% with that.
I mean, and therefore we have to go back to us, because we need a system. The primary thing is rights lie essentially with the ability of a nation to provide and protect the rights of its citizens. If we are slaves to $8 to $13 billion of worthless trash, we are not free. Our healthcare system, everything is being destroyed for the sake of bailing these bastards out.
And our families are the collateral for this money that they're giving away.
Yeah, well, it's even worse than that, because they may not live with the healthcare policy. It's coming down now. So the point is, this is the issue. The issue is this conception. We need to get back to what our original conception of a credit system. The problem we have is that no other part of the world knows what a credit system is. Only the United States has a true credit system. Every other part of the world is dominated by a monetary system, and the United States itself has become dominated by a monetary system